And you had a snail farm.
Yeah.
And how do you develop a snail farm?
Well, somebody told me this was a good thing to do. I mean, it actually never made any money. And I had a friend in town who was a milkman, and he got me old freezers, which I had out there. And we had the snails in those, but I used to have to bring them in, and they were in the spare bedroom. But it was quite interesting. I mean, snails are so speedy. If they got out of their cages, which they frequently did, they'd be up in a second and they'd be on the ceiling.
Yeah.
But I eventually stopped that, and somebody came and bought the whole lot.
And could you sell the snails? You could?
Well, I never got that far, and actually I think I must have been diddled by the original person who got me into them, because it didn't seem to work out.
And where did you get the snails for the farm? Did you buy them or did you collect them local?
No, I must have bought them, but honestly I don't remember now.
Yeah. They were a special breed then, obviously.
But I used to have to clean them out every day and extract the babies, and the babies lived in plastic basins in the spare bedroom.
Okay.
So that took a while, and then we did B&B, and I did pony trekking. I mean, you name it, we did it.
You've done
And then we did the weaving.
And how did that go?
Well, that was the most successful, and it lasted the longest. And that was when the Tibetans came. You see, when I lived in England, I was always interested in Eastern religions, and I got to know the secretary of the Buddhist Society, and they became friends, he and his mother. And at some stage when we were here, I had a letter from him saying that Dalai Lama had asked him if it would be possible to set up a self-supporting community of Tibetans in Ireland, because, you know, the Chinese had walked in on them, and all these ones had escaped over the mountains. So I thought, wouldn't that be great? We could do up the mill, because we had the looms and everything. We had a factory up at the house there.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they could live in the factory, they could have the looms underneath, and they could live up in the other stories. And I thought that was a great idea, and they did too. And they came to look at it, and they thought it was fine, and various ones came to stay with us and learn how to weave and so on. And God knows what the villagers thought. I mean, they were in their long saffron robes and sandals, and they cycled and walked around the village, you know. But nobody ever said anything. And anyway, then eventually the government wouldn't grant them visas. They said they were so sick of the Hungarians who had just all come to live here as well. And there'd been a lot of trouble, and they'd never wanted to hear the word refugee again. So that was that. So the Tibetans had to go. Well, then I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll invent my own system. And that's what happened. I decided you had to breathe, eat, exercise, and think correctly to be healthy. And it's still working on the same ideas.
And when did you start up that?
Well, that must have been in the 1970s.
70s.
Again, I never remember dates.
And where did you get the inspiration to do that? From yourself, or had you read about it? Or
from myself.
From yourself, yeah.
But where did I get the money was more to the point. And this was really interesting. Now I'm really interested in studying the law of attraction, like what you think is what you get, basically. So I was, although I didn't know it at the time, I was obviously thinking, you know, worrying about where to get the money. And then there was a bank strike here, if you remember.
I remember, yeah.
And the weaving was going, but we had to deal with an English bank. So I put whatever checks came my way into this English bank. And when the bank strike was over, sure, it was all coming back again to Ireland. I was getting my money back. And I got back several £100 above what I assumed I had. I mean, I've no idea how this happened. I didn't do it purposely. It just happened, and that was enough to start the refurbishing of the mill. It was a miracle, really.
When you were weaving, what were you making?
We made all sorts of things, like scarves and hats and jumpers and trousers and ties and jackets, anything.
And what were you using as a material? Was it wool?
Wool.
Wool, yeah.
Yeah.
And where were you getting the wool from?
Well, we got it from Hughes in Westport for a long time. And then I got it, I think out Cork, Cullen Mills, yeah, wherever.
And you made a good lot of money on this project, did you? It's profitable,
I never
was it?
seemed to have any money, although I did manage to go abroad a few times. So I suppose I had some.
Yeah, some, yeah. So then you got the monks in and you moved
But
into...
then the troubles in the north started, and as our stuff was really tourist-based, of course, it came to an end. And I even... Yeah, that was very difficult. I had to borrow money from various people, like bow makers. Do they still exist?
I'm not sure. I
I
haven't
don't
heard
know.
of them.
They were the chief money lenders, and I had other loans as well. And people used to say to me, well, that's certainly the end of you if you're tangled up with bow makers. However, every month or something, their reps would call, to get the money back that they'd lent me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hardly ever had it. Or else I'd given whatever I had to the first person that came. So I used to have to write to the other people and explain exactly what happened and that I really didn't have it. But I usually sent them something. But then when eventually I paid them all off, I had the last installment to give to bowmakers in Dublin. And I thought I'll go up and give it to them personally and thank them for never foreclosing on me, which I did. And they said, oh, come on in, we so enjoyed your letters. And then they said, if you ever want another loan, we're here. So that was bowmakers. They weren't the fiends I'd heard. So that was the mill, it started.
So then you went into the health side of thing, or the healthy living?
Yeah, but I had to start, you see. Obviously I couldn't do any of these things like massage and yoga myself, so I had to get people in who knew them and who would teach me. So in the beginning we just had groups to stay there, like the TM, Transcendental Meditation people. Like that, they just brought their own groups and they did their own thing and I fed them, And that went on for a while until I had learned how to do these things myself. And then I did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Still, it has the same program all these years later.
So what is the program?
Well, the program is, dieting is very important. Like they would have citrus fruit for breakfast, and then for lunch they have soup and salad, and then they have another kind of fruit for supper. So they don't have much, but they have yoga, and they have walking, and they have massage, and they have other things now, I'm sure, that I didn't have. But it's basically the same.
And would they be hungry on that diet?
Well, they would, and about Wednesdays they usually felt sick, and this was their system, adjusting, and the toxins being thrown off. But yeah.
And would they ever sneak downtown for a steak now? Or
What?
Would they ever sneak downtown for a steak or anything like that?
Possibly, some might have done.
They wouldn't tell you?
But it's very successful, and they all appreciated it, and some of them used to lose like stone. Some of them would lose about...
So there was an exercise element to it too, isn't there?
Oh, sure. Well, there was the yoga, and then there was the walking. And then at one point I did an adventure school, which was incorporated into the program with people who were more active, let's say, and I'd climb the reek with them and go out to Inishbofin and...
You would bring them yourself, would you?
Huh? I'd bring them,
yeah. Bring yourself, yeah. And then there was a bit of meditation in it, was there?
No, I wasn't into meditation. But they do meditation now. There's a guy who stays, and he does meditation with them.